Ms. Sanchez is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the opportunity for this committee to acknowledge and confront the reality of rising anti-Semitism and hate, especially on college campuses. And I want to thank each of our witnesses for sharing their stories and their perspectives today, because it takes a lot of courage to speak up. In the wake of Hamas's vicious terrorist attack against Israel on October 7th, our communities are reporting a troubling uptick in reports of anti-Semitic harassment. And I think we are all united in the belief that anti-Semitism cannot be tolerated in any form. It has no place in our communities, especially on college campuses and in our nation's schools. Unaddressed, that kind of hatred threatens the very fabric of our nation. I want to start my questioning with Mr. Greenblatt. I want to thank you for your testimony outlining the significant spike in anti-Semitic incidences in the wake of the Hamas-Israel war. We have to confront hate early and aggressively, and the federal government urgently needs to support programs that combat anti-Semitism. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely agree, Ms. Congresswoman.
And you provided many policy recommendations, which include investing in the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, which investigates complaints that students have been subjected to ethnic or ancestral slurs or to harassment based on their appearance, dress, or the way they speak in ways that are tied to ethnicity or ancestry. Is that correct?
I mean, Title VI covers protecting students based on ethnicity or national origin. So you have to show a pattern of discrimination, and the university not creating, again, a space where the student is able to learn and live freely.
But the question being, you recommend investing in the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. The Office of Civil Rights is responsible for, as you said, ensuring that schools provide all students, including students who are or are perceived to be Jewish, Israeli, Muslim, Arab, or Palestinian, in a learning environment that is free from discrimination that's based on race, color, or national origin. Mr. Greenblatt, would slashing the funding for the Office of Civil Rights by 25%, as House Republicans have proposed, make it harder for school and university leaders to protect students and foster a safe and supportive learning environment?
Well, I appreciate the question. I'm not familiar with the particular proposal you're suggesting. I would say that, as I mentioned before, and as I'll reinforce, the Office of Civil Rights, which is there for all students, deserves adequate funding so that it can deal with the large number of cases that it has. And I also believe that the office, there may be things that we can do right now to help it. So, for example, I had a meeting with the Attorney General last week. I recommended detailing lawyers from the Department of Justice over to education. It wouldn't require any additional money, could help them deal with the backlog of cases. I recommended IPAs. You could put people in the federal government on short terms of service. Doesn't require any additional money, but you could do that without raising the head count. And finally, the Department of Education doesn't need to wait for cases to be brought to it. It could appoint almost like a special prosecutor, that's not the right term, but someone to go out there and aggressively look at these cases. Doesn't require any additional money.
I appreciate those recommendations, but my question was whether a 25% cut in the Office of Civil Rights would help or hinder the ability to investigate those kinds of incidences of harassment.
Clearly adequate funding, so I would not recommend funding cuts at this time.
Great. I also just want to point out that House Republicans have also proposed slashing the FBI's operating budget, eliminating hate crime grants, and eliminating the Community Relations Service, which is also known as America's Peacemaker, for helping communities address conflict based on actual or perceived race, color, national origin, or religion. And I only raise those issues because given what the witnesses have shared with us today, I think that we ought not to be talking about slashing funding for vital programs which can help root out these incidences of violence or even prevent them before they escalate to incidents of violence. So instead of the proposed cuts to those critical programs, we should fully fund them or even plus up funding where needed. Lastly, I just wanted to say, Ms. Dror, I really appreciate you being here today and sharing difficult and frightening experiences with us, from threats and harassment to disturbing graffiti that you have experienced on your college campus, and it's not hard to understand why students are scared. What would you suggest my colleagues and I should remember as we consider the different ways the federal government can help address hate and prevent violent attacks on our friends, our families, and our neighbors?
Thank you so much. In terms of legal policy, I'm not an expert yet, so I would defer to the experts on this panel. But I hope you remember that I'm supposed to be in school right now. Like in this exact moment, I'm supposed to be in my constitutional politics class, which is funny.
You might get extra credit for actually being here. I don't know.
Let's hope. But Jewish students deserve to be able to go to their classes.
I agree, and thank you so much for your testimony. I yield back.